So thank you so much for doing this. Um,
Thank you for
uh,
having me.
so today we're going to talk a bit about stage management, learn some of the secrets of the trade.
Imagine that I know the secret.
Yeah,
But
that
yes.
high level secret of stage management. But do you want to just start off and introduce yourself and basically say a bit about what you would normally be doing
Yeah.
in coronavirus world?
Yes. So hi, I'm Izzie. I'm a freelance stage manager. That's what I'd call myself. And yeah, I pretty much try and work as a stage manager in London through sort of various different jobs. Like I'm not in one specific theatre or with one specific company. I kind of jump around and try and get as much experience as I can. I also try and do a bit of stage crew and kind of casual teching, which, as I'm sure we'll kind of talk about, are loads of different things within the stage management umbrella. But yeah, I started at Warwick University, working in the various drama societies there, and then I moved to London a couple of years ago now, in 2018. Yeah, and started working in London, or trying to. So yeah, that's me.
And what kind of got you into stage management at uni, and then enough that you wanted to keep pursuing it?
Yes, so I used to act, which I think is one of those things that quite a few people who are in production teams across the globe would say. I used to act in school, and when I got to university in first year, I was asked by a friend of mine to be on a production team, and I was just given this option, like, do you want to try producing or stage managing? And I was like, oh, stage managing sounds cool. I don't know what that is, but I'll give it a shot. And ever since then, I was just completely in love with it. I think what it is that I just love the routine of theatre so much, and that was what I loved when I was acting. Just coming in every day at the same time, saying hello to the same people, setting up, doing the show the same way. There's something about that I really enjoy. So finding out that I could do that and it not be like an individual pressure of acting as well,
Yeah,
meant that I'd found the perfect job for me.
I am Beth, and I've been a stage manager for about 3 years now, in, I guess, kind of mostly fringe, off West End theatres, a little bit of kind of community theatre as well, and some touring. So I've done a whole heap of stuff until, obviously, the great unnamed virus situation. Yeah, so I guess that's kind of what I do.
and how did you where did you kind of start and work through to doing those different jobs, as it were?
So I got into stage management, as sort of a lot of people seem to do, sort of by accident, really. I was doing sort of volunteering at a pub theatre in London, in kind of their box office setup, I guess, and a show came through and they were looking for someone to take on as an intern stage manager, and I didn't really know what that was, but I thought it sounded fun, and luckily it was an amazing company who were very patient, having someone just kind of learning the ropes as they went. Really enjoyed it, and have kind of stayed in the industry ever since. I did an MA last year in kind of general theatre production as well, which was really good to have a little bit of formal training in there as well.
Yeah, so you kind of touched on this already, but in terms of getting into stage management and finding that like it suited you and it was what you kind of wanted to pursue, do you think there's anything in particular that you found that made you go, oh, this is the thing I want to be doing?
I think for me, like, I love the whole kind of role, but there is something really special about being in a rehearsal room, particularly. So I could never be an actor. I tried once. I did my GCSE drama. It did not go well. but sort of, yeah, just getting an eye into that whole creative process of bringing a script to life. Yeah, and just that kind of process, which is so kind of alive with creativity.
Stage managers often have the kind of role of kind of crisis management, essentially, because you're the ones there every night live, and if something goes wrong, and not sound too much like a job interview, but I wondered if you had a story about something going wrong while you were stage managing.
Yes, I definitely do. I think I'll probably talk about the one that's like less traumatic, because there's definitely some that are like, they make me so like, oh, when I think back to them. But I remember it was my first ever show in London, so I'd like just managed to get this job with Break the Verse Theatre Company. It was a show called Schrodinger's Dog at the White Bear Theatre in Kennington, so like South London. And it was a really small space. It was like about 50 people, like 50 capacity venue, and yeah, it was just lovely, like above a pub. Yeah, classic. And we were about a week in, I think, of a 2-week run, about halfway, and beginners had been called, like everything was ready, and I was sat in the little tech box, which is kind of completely separate to it's just like a completely different room, and I had a couple of actors in there with me because they entered from that area, so they all had to wait in there with me. And it was quite early on, and so I just hadn't done a rig check, which is when you like check the speakers and make sure everything is working properly, because I wasn't really aware that was something you had to do. I was still kind of figuring it all out. And all the audience were in, like I was getting ready to shut the doors, and I was listening, and I was like, I don't think one of these speakers is working, because we had one speaker that was on stage, as well as the sort of PA speakers, and that speaker would have a phone ring sound effect, a lot of kind of things that are, supposed to happen on stage. And I was listening, and I was like, guys, in my head, and I was thinking, I can't say this to any of these actors because they're all in here with me, and if I freak them out, like they're just gonna be so terrified throughout the show. So I had to sort of walk on stage really casually with about like 2 minutes, and just sort of bend down and start trying to fiddle with this speaker. And I was looking at it like, please God, like now is not the time for this. And finally found out that it was just off at the wall, and that was it. And it was, honestly, I breathed the biggest sigh of relief, because I was sat there like, I have no idea what I'm gonna do if this doesn't work. And then the whole time the actors were like, is everything all right? And I was like, yeah, everything's fine, it's all fine, everything's fine. In my head I was screaming.
I've been quite fortunate, and there's been nothing or very few kind of things gone horribly wrong. So I did a show at the Vaults Festival, I guess, last year, so 2019, and I had to stop a show, get out a ladder in front. I mean, the audience just kind of stayed there talking amongst themselves, and climbed up this ladder to fix part of the set. Was like this Venetian blind which was falling down and just swinging. I was like, it's not health and safety approved.
So in that situation, were you the one that made the decision that you had to stop the show because it wasn't safe, or did someone else say we have to stop it and then you had to go out?
Yeah, so I think in any, you're always taking on like feedback from the rest of the team, but in that situation it was just me, because it was a very small show.
Yeah.
And you just look at it, and in that moment, yeah, I was like, oh, I'm gonna go for it, even though it's, quite embarrassing. And also you don't want to stop the show and kind of ruin the audience's experience for something that the actor could deal with. Which is, I mean, a lot of the time it's something goes slightly wrong, so an actor like forgets to take on a prop or whatever, and you're sitting there going, it's really gonna screw them over in 2 lines when they need
problem.
Yeah, showstops are actually, in my experience, relatively rare, which is nice.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, I just realizing I kind of never think about that idea, but that you kind of will often have that kind of final call on things, and like it's kind of essentially it's all these things that you can't prepare for, so it's just like your judgment in the moment.
I hate it so much.
if you do want to make a real career out of stage management, there's always lots of routes, of course, but what's kind of an obvious one, or one that you can see pursuing?
So when I first started, I just moved to London without any job security, which probably wasn't the best plan. But I just started looking on Facebook for different postings online. There are different sort of groups, like there's a backstage theatre group, there's groups for women backstage, so things that can kind of really put you in the mindset of that work, seeing loads of people talking about it who are in the same boat as you. And yeah, I think the best thing to do at the start of this career is just to try and say yes to as many things as you can. Obviously make sure it's something that you're interested in and something that doesn't seem dodgy or like weird, but it's kind of the general rule of thumb, to just kind of try as much as you can. Probably at the start you won't be paid very much or not at all, but like if it's a project that's interesting to you or it can fill out your CV, that was kind of the mentality I was trying to instill in myself. And yeah, I think from there you kind of want to start with fringe stuff, which is what I tried to do, and then work up to like small scale tours, which I haven't done yet because I've kind of taken a slightly different route. There's been a lot of twisting and turning, but kind of going to small scale tours and then trying sort of off West End stuff. But I think there's just many different ways with this industry. Like you could start and really see this sort of trajectory, or you could get an incredible job like and be a stage crew for some really big production, and then go back to something a bit more sort of fringy, and then go down to something that's like a pub theatre. You know, I think as long as you're happy with what you're doing and what you feel a passion for the job, the trick is to just kind of keep looking for jobs and keep trying to find things to do and keep yourself busy. Don't know if that made any sense, but
you're right. There is never any one route, so that's such a tricky question. Something you kind of mentioned a couple of times now, is this thing of the various aspects of stage management. You know, if stage management is sort of the umbrella term for several jobs.
Yes.
Can you like go into that a little bit? Because I feel like even I don't really know as much.
Well, I think there's quite a bit in sort of quite large productions. You've got the production manager at the top, and that's somebody who's kind of overseeing everything from the backstage elements through to the cast and like their well-being and making sure everything's running smoothly with like scheduling and stuff. Beneath that is your typical stage manager role, which normally involves surveying backstage, making sure that everything's going well with like automation, so like revolves or things being flown in, things like that, just making sure everything's running well. We're talking now sort of bigger productions, so we'll kind of look at smaller stuff as well. Beneath that is the DSM, or the deputy stage manager, and that's when you're on the book, so you're kind of calling all the cues for lights and sound and flies and automation, and you're also the person who writes the show reports every night, so you're very much focused on the one thing, not at all bothering yourself about if somebody is where they need to be or anything like that. And then you have the ASM, or the assistant stage manager, and that's very much props, handling props or flying something in, or kind of doing all those on the floor things that need to be done to get the show to run. When you're looking at like a smaller show, you're more likely to have just an SM who does pretty much all of that, which is great for building confidence in all those different areas, but can be quite hectic and stressful. And then you could also have sort of stage crew members, but they tend to come under the carpentry umbrella, so it's a bit different, but they can do different things that an ASM needs them to do and stuff like that. So yeah, I think there's loads of different jobs within that. It's kind of a hierarchy once you start, you know, not a hierarchy, but like a ladder, because you can start as an assistant and kind of shadow the deputy and work your way in that way. yes, hope that was comprehensive enough.
Definitely, and it's good. It's just a whole world of it, isn't it? And yeah, every project, whatever sort of size or budget, often kind of has different makeup of those people.
And also, like, everybody is so vital to the job getting done. Right. Which is like really, I mean, a lot of people say that with actors as well, be it ensemble or principal. Within the stage management world, like, you need every single one of those people to make the show work the way it should.
Totally.
I think that, like you say, there's so many different routes, and I think a lot of it does come down to luck, I guess, and being in the right place at the right time and meeting the right people. I think either people tend to go into it and start off in fringe theatre, and as I did, kind of learn what you need to learn on the job, or people go in and maybe have done theatre at school and go in and get a drama school degree, and kind of that route seems to be a better way of getting into maybe the bigger shows quicker, right? Because you have a loads of experience in drama school at working on big scale shows, because that's what they do, and also there's lots of kind of placement opportunities. And I think I think if you don't go down that route, it's harder, definitely, to break into commercial theatre, West End. It doesn't seem to be impossible. So I think if you don't go to drama school and don't go down that route, it's harder, especially to break into West End or kind of commercial theatre. But I don't think it's impossible, and it's definitely, I mean, before Corona, obviously, something that I was looking into was, I'm here in my career and how do I get there? And I think it is just a question of like making connections with people. That's the number one advice that I was being given, is just kind of getting in touch with stage managers who are doing the jobs that you want and shadowing them. And seeing if they know about opportunities, because it's quite like a word of mouth business. There's like a couple of major job sites, but a lot of the time it's people I've worked with before, or who know people that I've worked with before. Which I guess makes it kind of easy in some ways and harder in other ways if you don't have those connections. With the different titles, it's sort of a misleading in a way, because they're not necessarily like a progression, or I mean they can be, but they're also kind of fairly well defined roles in their own right. So a deputy stage manager has a really specific job within the kind of team, which is to essentially, I mean, it's broader than this, but to cue lights and sound and make sure that they're all happening at the right time, which is quite a specific skill. So I think I don't know, obviously there is then a progression to stage manager, but I know definitely some people that's their job, and that's kind of, it's not about getting to stage manager, it's about being a deputy stage manager in a like bigger role, if that makes sense.
So you can make a whole career each part of stage management. It's not always about
going up through the levels. But I mean, also you can do that. So it's it's watch and make it.
I wanted to ask this question, and this is something that I think it's funny, when I started thinking about all these different areas, and it's when I realized that I just don't know as much as I thought I did, or as I should, because what I do, I'm not generally in the theatre night after night, as you say, making sure the show goes on as it should. And from my outside perspective, the stage manager is kind of, as you said, the primary caretaker almost, and kind of I just wonder, like, what's it like in your experience, if I'm right, being kind of the top, I don't know, at the top of the chain of responsibility? It's a big role. I know. I mean, I think there's something
wonderful about the way theatre works, in that even though there are hierarchies, it's so collaborative. And I think because all the roles are kind of so different, that it's not like, oh, I'm the boss and then my assistant, da 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 da. Everyone's kind of doing their own individual roles.
Yeah.
And they're doing them fabulously. But I think obviously because of the work that the actors are doing, and especially kind of actors, because what they do is so kind of unusual, that I think it's really important that there are people there that kind of just really facilitate their role. I mean, that they don't have to worry about what's going on. They know that if they need a prop, the prop is going to be there.
What kind, when you think about a production, sort of from right at the inception, when, let's say for example, the writer begins the script all the way through to the point that it's on stage in front of an audience, when does the stage manager get involved, and where would you say they kind of fit into the whole team behind a production? Because it's huge, even on a small production, there's so many people.
I think I would say, like, definitely not in sort of the writing process or the early talks with the director, but from a very early point, the stage manager tends to be present and tends to be involved. With experience that I've had, it tends to be that you have a few meetings before the rehearsals, maybe even before casting, where you're sort of talking about ideas of how to move forward and what you will need to do and how that particular team needs you to be involved. But from rehearsals onwards, for most productions, you're very much in the room every day. You're kind of the constant presence with the director, and obviously the producer, but they're not necessarily always needed in the room. I think it's very much the director and the stage manager that need to be there all the time. It can vary, like in smaller productions to bigger productions. If you're an SM, you will need to be there, but ASMs, for example, could be called in like for the final rehearsal or just the tech onwards.
Right.
But mostly stage managers tend to be in the room for rehearsals, and then up until final rehearsal into tech and dress, you're very much there doing what you need to do. And then from that first preview, it becomes your show, which sounds a bit like, I'm going to take the show from you, but it's like you very much become the person in charge from that first preview onwards. And there's even a kind of little ritual that some production teams do. I know I've definitely done it in the past, where they kind of hand it over to the stage manager and the cast. And then from that point on, it's pretty much you. And if it's just you, then just you or your team, with the cast taking the show all the way to the end, to that final night. So it's very much a hands-on part of the industry, and you're very much involved from beginning to end, I'd say.
Yeah, massively. I think essentially, in fact, what we're kind of seeing is that you're the sort of the longest running person. You're the constant. From almost day one to the end. You're there every day. As you kind of said, even the director who's fully there through rehearsals and previews, then once we're all up and running, most directors aren't in every night, but you are. It does, it becomes sort of you're the caretaker.
And I think, like, it's really interesting. I remember once a director talking to the cast about this, and I felt like it applied to my job as well, as like a lot of people view the rehearsal period as work and then the run as like the fun bit. And it's like very much not the case. I think that the rehearsal is like the preparation for the work. But it can obviously, when you relax into it, it's great fun and everything, but it's still like the main part of the job, and the main work that you have to get done is that run, and less so like the prep for it. And I mean, that's as important, but it's really easy to get complacent in that run section, but that's like the part that I think is the most fulfilling work-wise. Definitely.
Typically, in my experience, join just before rehearsals start. So there's already like months of development work that goes into getting the show even to the point where it can start rehearsals, in terms of like designing, production managers who are kind of in the same bracket as stage managers, I would say, will be involved from like way further back. But stage management, starts with rehearsals, and during the rehearsal period, you're right, it's like it goes through these like developments as a role. So rehearsals start, and the role of the stage manager is kind of to support that whole process and facilitate the show going from being a script with some design ideas to the fully kind of fledged thing that gets taken to the theatre. And so it's about kind of supporting the actors, making sure that all the props that they need to rehearse with are there, making sure that all the kind of communication that needs to happen in that period is happening. So the things that the director kind of throws out in rehearsals is being like noted down, so that the designer knows that this kind of certain prop is needed, and it's not just kind of being said and then lost. And then I guess you get to actually the point where you're in the theatre, and it becomes I guess it takes on more responsibility. So Tech Week is the period between finishing rehearsals and opening the show. So it's where the tech gets put in, and it's kind of the period during which stage management goes from being like supporting the director. I mean, we're always supporting the director, but to having kind of that responsibility for what happens in the theatre. I guess it becomes more about just making sure that everything is happening as it should, and being a kind of figure of authority, because it's not really, it's too collaborative for that, but kind of a figure of like responsibility. And I mean, from a very practical level of kind of leading that whole process of rehearsing it in a theatre with the tech. So start here, get on stage, get off stage, that kind of taking charge of that, and ensuring that the same production gets put on stage every night, that everything is where it should be every night, that all the cues happen where they should happen every night, get fixed, and all the little problems that come up get ironed out, and essentially that the show goes on every night at the right time.
We kind of touched on it before when we were talking about how a stage manager kind of has lots of different roles through the journey of a production. And I think going along with that, I always think of stage manager as very much someone that communicates with lots of different people. You know, some people might play their part in a production and really only communicate with maybe one or two other departments regularly. And a stage manager kind of has to be a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I was wondering like how you find that.
Fun, I think. Not always easy. I think it's a lot of what the thing is that I've learned through bitter experience is you cannot communicate too much, and you cannot communicate kind of too clearly, because as soon as you kind of assume that someone knows something, or that assume that someone said something so they'll remember it, is when you suddenly, find yourselves 2 weeks down the line and the set isn't where it should be because no one's told this person that needs to move, and so I guess you have to kind of have this dual ear, where in one part of your brain is doing what you're doing, whatever task that is, but the other kind of is listening out and making kind of recording and making notes of things that are said. And then there's just an awful lot of emails being sent out at all times, and WhatsApps. I don't know how people stage manage without WhatsApp. and WhatsApp groups.
Yeah.
Send it to the cast. It sounds a nightmare.
The true key the stage manager.
But yeah, I think it's really fun actually, because you get to build relationships with the whole team. And I feel it can be a bit strange when, I don't know, like lighting and sound designers come in for a few days in tech and they don't necessarily know the cast, and obviously they're intrinsically involved with the show and and the production, but I feel like there's kind of a missed opportunity there or there can be, or not a missed opportunity, but I guess just that you feel like kind of privileged to have that, the building of relationship with the tech side and the cast side together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you're sort of so involved across it that you get time with everyone, which a lot of people don't. Like, I was saying that funny thing when you're at a press night and I've done that thing where I've introduced two people who I know are both equally intrinsic to the production. And we're at press night, so the majority of their job is often kind of done, but they've never met. It's a bit mad sometimes. I think stage managers are one of the only people that really do meet and like you say, bond with everyone, which is really cool. It's really nice.
I think you definitely have to learn to manage different personalities, and I think that's like a really interesting part of the job. Like, doesn't necessarily mean that to be a stage manager you have to be very sociable or very outgoing, but you definitely have to learn how to speak to people who want to get their opinions heard and make sure that that's happening throughout the process. And that can sometimes be difficult when you're working with very headstrong people, or people who want things to be done a certain way. So I think it's always interesting communicating with people, but the main part of it is trying to find compromises between all these departments and make sure that everybody feels, that the lighting designer feels like their vision is being achieved through, like, and the director kind of listening to that and making sure that they understand that there might be limitations that the lighting designers brought up, even though the director really wants something a certain way. So you kind of have to be that mediator in the room, which can be really fun, if you enjoy getting to know a lot of different people. And I think there's definitely a lot of personalities in a room, be it the writer or the director or the cast or the tech team. There's definitely a lot of different ways that people click, and I think it's really, you can make it really fun and enjoy doing it, but it can sometimes be a bit of a push to get through it. Yeah, for sure.
I always remember I got told, I don't even know if it's that good an analogy, but it's just stuck with me. A production team is like a Victoria sponge cake. Okay, stay with me.
Oh, that sounds great.
Everyone, each row is like a different slice of the cake. So the director's their own slice, the writer's a slice, each designer, all the way around. The stage manager isn't the slice of the cake. Stage manager is the jam in the middle.
Nice. I love that. Oh, I'm stealing that one.
Yeah,
that's great.
It's good, isn't it? But I think
that's
it's
really
a big responsibility to hold the whole cake together.
It is, and it can be quite scary, when you realize that a part of the way that people are communicating is to do with you and how you're kind of passing those messages along. But I just think it's fun. I think if you enjoy meeting people and there's different types of people around, it's just the best. And it's kind of a bit of a head scramble trying to figure out how to make sure everybody works together, but it's an achievement when you manage it, if you manage it, which sometimes you don't. But yeah,
I can say from experience that you do. So talking about all the different people that you communicate with and that kind of responsibility almost for them, I think especially with the company, with the actors, often the stage manager, especially if they're also a company manager, they're kind of the first port of call for like emotional support, which is a pretty unusual aspect of a job, to be such a big part of the job.
That's true.
Yeah, I can't really imagine that being
Yeah.
a job description in a way. Is
Yeah. And to be honest, like I mean the experience that I've had, it hasn't been. And like I think there's quite a large stereotype of stage managers being very like, I don't care about your feelings. We need to do this now.
Mm.
But for me, it's just always been such a big part of the job, like maybe an unspoken part of the job, but I just think it's so important to make the cast and the crew, but like the cast mainly when you're working with them on that run, feel comfortable with you. And it's definitely a tricky line to tread between sort of friend and confidant. And like, if I crack the whip, it means we need to do something now. So you kind of have to really find that balance. But I think that, you know, with all of these different facets, like the company need to make sure that if something's uncomfortable for them, that they can talk to me, or I like to make sure that that's an option. And even for the production team, you know, when we're talking about get-ins and texts and it's so stressful, you really need somebody to sort of help be there and support you. And I think it's an important part of the job, but I think there's also a tendency for stage managers to let everybody take their emotional support and then have nowhere to support themselves. And I kind of always have been trying to do this from the start, like making sure that there's somebody else in the team who you can rely on as well, or maybe it's somebody back home, like friends or a partner or something that you're able to lean on, because if you're supporting everybody all day, which I think you have a tendency to do because you know you're the person who's managing, it can be very taxing on you to kind of take all of that and then be stressed and not know where to put it because you don't want to burden the cast or the director or anything like that. But yeah, overall I think for me it's such a big part. And I've had directors say to me before, like, oh, you don't need to, we wouldn't expect that from you. And I'm like, but that's who else is doing it. Like,
I think that's exactly my thought.
Yeah.
You're the one that's there and lines.
Yeah. And I'm always surprised when directors say that, because I just think that's, for me, that's such a big part of, like, I remember putting a lot of pressure on myself early on to make sure I was friends with all of the cast and all of the crew, and like, it's a lot of pressure which I've definitely alleviated, but I think that you feel this tendency and this need to like make sure everybody is happy and okay and comfortable, which is good for everyone else and is good for you, but just making sure to
with limits,
treat yourself, and not let yourself get too caught up in pleasing everybody else, and making sure everyone else is good.
I think, I mean, a lot of it comes down to the fact that anything kind of practical that affects the show, your kind of is information that you're privy to. So things that you might, any kind of like illness or injury, but even like kind of personal things, family situations, that might have an impact on like an actor's availability or their ability to do the show is kind of, you might not know if you're in another role, but I would kind of know. So I think from that point of view, you're in a really position to give emotional support, but I think it's kind of more than that really, because I guess what I was saying earlier about kind of facilitating the actors and being kind of outside of being kind of outside of their role, which I think is kind of a specific role, I guess.
This is a big one. So I don't actually expect a definitive answer on it. But it's interesting, and I think it's especially interesting right now when essentially theatre is sort of on pause, you know. None of us are able to make it. We don't really know when we will. But what I'm kind of hoping is that maybe the silver lining of this is a time where everyone is kind of reflecting a bit on what they do and on the industry as a whole. And when we come out of this, we might have the opportunity to do some things differently and better, maybe. And I wondered if there was anything in your world of stage management that you would kind of hope to see change, I suppose? Big question.
Yeah, big question. I think, yeah, there are things about stage management that are not kind of ideal, but that you can't possibly change. The hours are antisocial, and you do kind of have to work sort of contract to contract, which isn't great for the old job stability. But I think, I know definitely, especially in the West End, kind of steps are being made towards improving like job sharing and flexible working, which is obviously really great for parents and just people generally, if you don't have to kind of commit to those really grueling antisocial hours. I definitely think that's something that's going to become, or hopefully that's kind of develop and become more common. I think I would like to see a sort of an end to profit share, which is, or not an end, but kind of, I don't know. It's a model of theatre making where, it's not, but your salary is kind of not guaranteed, and it's often kind of used in fringe shows where obviously, and it's never, I don't think it's a malicious thing. It's just producers, that funding for theatre is hard to come by. But I think it means that the industry is not accessible to people who cannot afford to take the risk of low paid or potentially no paid work. Yeah. And so I don't know what the answer to that is. Otherwise, I would, I don't know, be Prime Minister probably if I could solve things like that. But yeah, I guess just some way of making the industry at all levels more accessible. And I guess, going through to like commercial and West End, making that more accessible to people who don't have the drama school background, would be good.
Definitely. Yeah, I hope you're right. I hope that almost by none of us being able to work, if it could encourage a bit more, I suppose, more value on people's work. Not that, as you say, it's not malicious when people do profit share productions, and I'm not saying they don't value everyone that gives their time and energy to it. I know they do, but they're not putting any financial value on it. It's just not really sustainable for anyone. And also interesting what you say. I think it does seem like there is this sort of gap between fringe and off West End and touring and other work and commercial West End seems to be quite separate in stage management. I think in other areas it's easier to really just continue right through. And I think stage management, there does seem to be a bit of a chasm that no one really seems to know how to cross. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I think even if they did things like kind of placements or internships for people who weren't current drama school students or things like that, just kind of, you basically just need to kind of ways to network yourself into that part of the industry.
I think, like, regardless of the current kind of pandemic climate that we're in terms of stage management, I've always felt like that there's it's one of the largest percentages of women in the theatre industry. So it's kind of on a parallel with the costume department, and that those are the two sort of largest parts where women play a really large part. And I mean, I think that overall there's been a lot of steps taken over the last sort of 5-6 years that are slowly starting to take that into consideration and like understand what it actually means. Like there's a lot of boots, like steel toe boots that are being made for women now, or like the gear that are being designed for women's bodies, and like obviously that's fab, but like I would really love to see, I don't know again if generally the pandemic is going to fix this, but in my sort of ideal of what a stage management team could look like with equality, I just think I was just reading this really interesting book called Invisible Women, to do with like data and stuff like that. And it was talking about how there's areas such as construction don't necessarily cater for women's bodies when they're thinking about how they're using things, and that can sort of affect how effectively a woman is building something or lifting something. And it doesn't mean that they're less capable, it just means that they do things in a different way. And so I would just love to see like tools that are built for women's hands, or like narrower lifting, like just things that can kind of bring out we talk about, but I just love to see that sort of thing, like in an industry where women are so capable. To kind of see that come through would be great, but don't know how that will be affected by the pandemic.
Yeah, putting it out there is the first thing.
Putting it out there, yeah.
Honestly, I think that's such a good point, and I love that you went to like something incredibly practical.
Yeah, I just think
not just a sort of idealized thing. It's on a day-to-day basis, your job is easier if things are made to support you.
Yeah, I think it's something that I hadn't really thought about, and I think if I hadn't read that book I would think a lot about idealized things and sort of gender pay gap and everything like that, which is obviously just as important. But I think those kind of just understanding like what's been made for our bodies, and especially in an industry where our job is very much the practical side of it, and like rigging lights and lifting things, and it would just be really cool to kind of feel like we weren't trying to do what men could do, we were doing the job as women, and managing it just as well, which is definitely like, you know, there's a lot more, there's loads of different, I think there's like lighting and stuff like that where there's a lot less women, and obviously there moves in that as well, but for my part of the industry I think that there's a lot of women there now. They're definitely there, so like making sure that they're represented and being able to do things just as well would be pretty cool.
Is there any job really in the industry that in some ways, maybe because of what you do in your kind of area, you won't interact with, and like that is as much a mystery to you as stage management is to some people?
I think, I mean, less of a mystery, but more something that just interests me is like the whole concept of like marketing and designing like for a show, that I just find so interesting. And I just never really, like, obviously I have conversations with people who do the marketing, but like I've never really kind of looked into what that means and what they have to struggle with and deal with and do. Like something that I love on the West End is when like a theatre completely transforms for a show, and it's not just about the stage, it's about like the lobby and the bar and all that, and I just love that kind of stuff.
I think it's like quite a privileged position where you do get to interact, like I say, with loads and loads of different departments. I would say, cheeky plug for a video that is coming out, casting is an area that, usually by the time I'm involved with the show, casting's done and dusted. So that whole kind of process is a bit of a mystery, to be honest.
That's right, because there is video on casting. Have you been in the audience of someone else's show and something goes wrong, and do you get like a stage management like instinct, you know, kicking in?
Reaction.
Yeah.
I think, you know, because I was thinking about that, and I'm like, I don't actually have a really impressive story about that, but I think it's like very small experiences rather than like a big one. Like I always notice, like if there's a show stop, I'm like immediately on it. I'm like, oh my god, what's happened? And then I'm like looking at them like, oh, they dealt with that really well. Or like I remember I went to see Hamilton and we had a showstopper in Act 1, and it was so smooth. It was like a joy. It was literally like they walked, like the ASMs walked on, tapped the actors, off they walked, and yeah, it was just fab. I think I'm less so, I tend to sort of notice these little things, but what I tend to do more is be that annoying person in the venue when we sit down, where I like have to figure out the tech before the show starts. It's like, and I'm always like looking up at the rig, like, oh, that's a hidden disco ball in Book of Mormon there, and that means that that's coming out. Or like, oh, there's a really heavy rigs, that can't just be for lights, that's got to be carrying, someone's going to fly in this show.
Oh, wow.
So I kind of, yeah, and I just, it's honestly my favorite thing to do, and it really annoys anyone I'm with, but I like have to figure it out. And if I see something on stage, I like have to, that's why seeing the Harry Potter and the Cursed Child show was like so hard for me. I was just sat there like, okay, what, like, how did you do that one? Like, and at any time I figured it out, even if it was something small, I'd be like, oh, brilliant.
Yeah. I wonder if you've ever had the experience where you're in the audience and something's gone wrong, and do you have like a sort of stage manager instinct that like kicks in at that point?
I was like racking my brains because I've seen so much theatre.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen anything major go wrong, because I think this is the, like, when you're in a team and something goes wrong on the show, you're so aware of it and you're like, oh, the audience must think we're fools, but everyone have no idea.
Yeah, that is true.
So I think, I mean, I'm always very aware of things like phones that ring even once they've been picked up. You're like,
yeah,
come on, make your cues sharper. Or even, you know, like when a character's like reading a letter or something, but it's just a blank piece of paper. I feel like I've got eagle eyes for those sort of details.
Yeah.
Because they're exactly the sort of details that some director or designer would shout at me for.
Have you ever seen like the play that goes wrong or noises off or something like that? And is that actually just a very stressful experience for you?
I watch those like just in awe, because everything, the amount of like planning behind stage, but not backstage, to get things to go wrong at the right time is just, I love it. Noises Off was one of the last shows I watched before all this happened, so it's hilarious. I love it.
It's so good. It's so good. But I think
I love seeing stage managers like represented. I was like, whoop, whoop.
that show like shines stage manager struggle.
Yeah.
I'm glad you haven't had a show like that.
Yeah.
You never do. But yeah, and so so people sometimes say like, oh, is it not a bit tiring, or like, you know, you can't enjoy the magic in the same way. But I think there's something so enjoyable about knowing how the magic works.
Oh god, I'm the same. Yeah, I think it's more magical knowing that like there's a team of humans behind that backdrop that's like done that. Like that to me is just so much more magical than it just happening and me not knowing.
What is one thing that you wish people knew about your job?
Yes. I mean, I'm sure we've touched on it throughout this whole chat, but it's like appreciating. I'd love for people to be able to appreciate how everything that happens in a show that's technical is someone's job. And I just love how like the deputy stage manager who's on the book can make an audience member cry because they cue a light or a sound at the exact moment, like right moment that like hits them in the heart, you know, or that like an ASM can control something automated that like flies in that looks so finessed, that like an audience member's just completely like taken by the magic of it and doesn't question it. And even like a stage manager can run like a really tight ship so that the whole show goes without a hitch. There's just so much of that people don't know about, and I think in a way actually that's not that bad, because I think my like big thing that I always say is that if the SM team are doing their job right, the audience shouldn't even know that they exist. And like that's something I love, because it's so opposite to the company. Like everyone is aware of the company and knows who they are, and then there's like this other side of it, this like dark side, that it's like if you don't notice that I do something or that the team does something, then that means that we've done it, we've like hit the nail on the head and it's perfect. So I don't know, that's I've kind of negated my point, but
no,
yeah.
it's a good point. I think maybe, I suppose what we're saying is, in the context of in the audience watching a show, you absolutely want you and your team to be invisible. But when we're considering the industry as a whole and thinking about people other than people we work with every day, and so on, it's good to have the awareness that
and just
out there making it happen.
And just taking a moment to, like, I remember I was watching City of Angels in the West End, that was kind of previews, and I was listening to, it was a friend of mine who was on the DSM role, and I was kind of going through, and we were about halfway through Act 2, and I just turned to my partner and I was like, have you noticed that, like, every single light cue has been spot on? And I was like, we're not noticing it because, like, it's so good. Like, if it wasn't, you would notice. You'd be like, oh, that spotlight's late, or like, oh, that's a bit. But when you don't notice, it's like when you should just take a little moment to be like, somebody's doing that really, really well.
Yeah.
That I've, like, completely been taken by this, and everything's on point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is one thing I wish people never know, which is that the whole thing, everyone assumes, oh, you know, you work in theatre, it must be so fantastic, which obviously it is, but also there's a lot of, like, washing someone's sweaty show pants, or standing underneath the hand dryer in a rehearsal public toilet, no, in a theatre's public toilet, like drying a costume that needs to go on. Which is sort of
less glamorous.
It's not glamorous at all, but it's amazing. So yeah, I like people thinking I have this mysterious, fabulous theatre life. But yeah, the majority of people are just generally lovely, and I think that's it's sort of inevitable when you have a career or an industry that is people who are passionate. Like, I mean, you said it earlier, like, no one is doing this for money. A few people are doing it for fame, but they're not going to get very far. The majority of people are doing it just because they love it, and I think that makes for, like, a really lovely working environment most of the time.
Yeah, well, I think that's a very positive note to end on.
It's quite an underappreciated part of the industry, but I think most of us like it that way, in a way. So it's all right.
Not generally spotlight seekers.
Definitely not.
Well, in that case, thank you for letting me put a spotlight on you.
Thank you. No, thanks for letting me ramble at you.
I didn't script that, but that was great. I loved that we.
Oh, thank you. It was really fun. Yeah, I'm sorry that I've been rambling for so long.
Not at all.
About things.
A conversation.
No, it's
yeah,